Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts. In this episode, we will be discussing the power of people in a digital world and enhancing business growth, amongst other things. And I am delighted to welcome Vera Quinn, CEO of Sidecore. Vera, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Susie. I'm really, really excited to do this.
Me too. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Vera, you've been with Sidecore for 25 years in various positions, including COO, VP of Operations, VP of Sales, but you were named CEO in 2020, and I know you've been a driving force behind the growth of the business, but also of the people. And I know that, you hone in on the value of people, a quest we share, and creating opportunities for people to grow as well as the business. And if we come back to your position as CEO, as I said, you didn't start there, but you've had like a multifaceted and multinational journey to get there. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and your pivotal moments in that story? But one question I like to ask before that is, how would you describe yourself? I love that question.
That is an interesting question, right? I don't know how I feel about labels.
Interesting.
Right? I just, listen, sometimes I'm fun, sometimes I'm a mom, sometimes I'm a business person, sometimes I'm anxious, sometimes I'm confident, sometimes I'm beautiful, sometimes I'm not so beautiful. So I don't know. I don't know how I describe myself. You said something interesting, multifaceted. I think at different times, I'm really different things. So I tend not to pick one or two just because I don't want that to be the label. And I'm a big believer that and really anybody, if they want to, they can be whatever or whoever or however they want.
Yeah, and I really love that lens of what, from a potential perspective, but also from, a self-worth perspective of what we can be, what we should be, what we could be. And we'll come to that later on around how we define our own definitions of those things. But so basically, you basically just described being a human being, which is great.
Right.
It's complex, it's different. You never know exactly what you're going to get.
And sometimes I show up amazingly, and sometimes I show up really poorly. And I don't think any of those things define me for a long period of time.
No, which is great. And we'll come back to that thought. So I'm going to ask our listeners to hold that thought while you tell us a little bit more about your story, which for me is multifaceted and multinational and really quite eclectic. So it would be really interesting if you could just walk us through your story.
Yeah, so my parents are immigrants. I think that's really important. That lens and that perspective really shaped me. There was definitely a very big influence, both personally and professionally. They immigrated from former Yugoslavia. They moved to Toronto. My parents met. My mother was on vacation in Yugoslavia. My father lived there. They, had a little bit of a courtship and then, got married and I was on the way. They moved to Canada mostly because my mother had already lived there and just, the whole dream, right? Better life, better family. And we were taught from a really young age that it's our responsibility to have a better life than they have.
Interesting.
And it was it was just a message. There was no way that we weren't going to do better. And that was in all ways, whether it was school, whether it was relationships, whether it was, our business life, whether it was parenting, our job was to do better than they did. Okay. So that was, and I just think that shapes who I am today.
Was that pressure for you, Vera, or was it like a driving force?
I think in the beginning it was pressure, especially during my teenage years.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure and a lot of rebellion against that. Yeah. As I got a little bit more mature, experienced, got some of that rebellion out, it was inspiring and it was a driving force. But there was a period of time in my life where when I look back, I'm like, ugh, it didn't show up really well. And I didn't want that kind of pressure. My dad was an entrepreneur. He could fix cars. So, also classic, little bit of a classic story. Played the lottery, won $10,000,
Oh,
opened up his
wow.
first car mechanic shop,
Wow. Okay.
which I just
Brilliant.
think is,
Brilliant.
so cliche. But I did have front row seats to how do you run a business?
Wow.
How
Yeah.
do you take care of customers? How does a family participate in a business? Because we all, from when we were very young, worked with my dad. As soon as we were able to, really work, we pumped gas at the gas station. I mean, we had our shifts. So, I learned a lot about just what it meant to be in business. As I was in college, I answered an ad in a newspaper for a sales role. I didn't know it was a sales role at the time. And I walked into a sales office that was affiliated with Sitcor and, started talking to customers at the door residentially and learned a lot about just a lot of different values that I think, again, have really influenced who I am today. And I loved it. I loved the commission only. I love the fact that I had to go out and make my own money. I love the fact that I spoke to 40 or 50 customers a day. I loved that I got to see who I wanted to be when I grew up, talking to those people, and who I didn't want to be when I grew up. I transitioned to Sitcor, working at head office, and I'm still in Toronto. There was a change in management, new CEO came in, Gary Polson, and he was going to move the business to California.
Oh, okay.
So they kept a small office up in Toronto, but the majority of the operations were going to move to California. I'd never met anybody like Gary. He was a professional business person. He'd run several businesses, very successful person, both career and family.
Okay.
He had a beautiful family. He was just, he is an incredible human being. Ron Nathanson was the CFO at the time. And they said, hey, would you be interested in coming to California on a work visa and helping us set up operations there? Unheard of.
Wow. I was just thinking during that silence is very topical. It's like, wow. Okay.
Unheard of. We don't move away from our family. I think my sister, my brother, and my parents live within one city block from one another.
Okay.
It's just not what we do. I thought I'm never going to get a chance like this again. I'm never going to get to build something with these kind of people. I didn't have those kind of people around me in my circles, my family. I didn't have that experience. I wasn't exposed to it. I had been married. I got married young. I just had my son, who was 26 years old. And unfortunately, 6 months after I had my son, my husband and I had been married 5 years, but it wasn't going to work out. So now I have a 6-month-old baby. Business is moving to California. And I said, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
I'm going to go. I'll go for 3 years. It's 3 years of my life. I'll never get this experience again. I don't believe you get incredible rewards without incredible risk. I don't think life works that way. So I thought I'm gonna do this.
It's really interesting because it's linked to two things that I wanted to sort of touch on, and I think it's topical for us to do that now. One of them is, risk taking, which of course is in entrepreneurship is huge. In setting up businesses is huge. In moving to California with a 6-month-old baby is also huge.
Moving to France.
Yeah, moving to France, my whole life to France as well was also huge. Yes, thank you. I never sort of see my situation as that massive. But yeah, it was big at the time. And I think I learned a lot about risk taking from what I did. At the time, it was an instinctive decision, like you're talking about, a gut decision of do it, you won't ever get this opportunity again. It's now or never, do this. But what did you learn about taking risks, Vera, from doing that?
Well, 25 years later, listen, it's easy for me to say, it worked out.
Yeah.
So it's easy to, you look back and you just say, wow, it's easy, right? But I think almost anything great or big in life is a risk. Marriage is a risk. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to turn out. I'm not 100% sure how that human's going to turn out. I don't know if we're going to turn out together or if we're going to turn out apart.
Yeah.
I have no idea if, our sense of values and how we want to raise a family is going to be exactly the same. It's a risk.
Yeah.
But the best things in life are risky.
Yeah.
Having a child is a risk. Who knows?
Yeah.
Am I going to be a good parent? Are they going to be a good kid? I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, of
You
course.
just don't know. So to me, I think I've always looked at go where the discomfort is.
Yeah, absolutely. Growth and
Right.
comfort.
And that's in anything. I've just always, okay, this is really uncomfortable for me. I was playing pickleball for the first time. I'm the most uncoordinated human being in the history of mankind. And I'm like, I'm just not gonna like this. I'm playing with super competitive people. I don't think I'm gonna be good. I have all this self-talk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, now you have to play.
To prove to yourself.
Right. Now you just have to play. However it turns out, it's going to turn out. Who cares? It's just pickleball, not that big a deal. And when I think about risk taking, I think at the end of the day, it's always when I take the risk when I'm finished, I just always feel better about doing it. Rather than I'm so afraid, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm just not gonna try. I feel a lot more regret after not trying than I do taking a risk and trying.
And how explicitly do you share that with your top team and within the culture, within your leadership culture at Sidel?
Well, I think it's interesting. Life and our systems are set up to reward people that are right.
Yeah. You mean in the binary right or wrong?
Right or wrong, right? Did you get the A or did you get the C?
Yeah.
Do you know the answer or do you not know the answer? So what we try to do here at Sidcor, and we try, I'm not saying we do this perfectly. And Gary taught me this lesson a long time ago. Our goal and my ability to have the right answer, maybe 10% of the time. Maybe. So then my goal as a leader is grab really smart people, get them around me, give them a voice, allow them to share their ideas and their thoughts.
Yeah.
And the right answer will come through the dialogue and the people.
Brilliant.
Okay? So culturally, I don't care. So if you were on my leadership team, Susie, I wouldn't be like, oh, you have the right answer all the time, Susie. Who cares? It's not the goal. The goal is, can we brainstorm? Can we think about, because there's always like 6 or 7 solutions. There's never just one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
6 or 7 things. Okay. And then what are the pros and cons of each of these things? And then, okay, what's the plan to go attack it? So I don't think we reward people for the right answer. We reward people for getting their voice out. We reward people for collaboration. We reward people that push back and say, yeah, that idea, these are the 2, 3 reasons why I don't think that's going to work. And then what happens is people will take a risk.
Of course.
Because they don't have to be right.
Yes, they don't have to be right, Vera, but also what I'm hearing is, and I deal a lot with this, is that the system is also coherent. So the policies, the process, it's rewarding and incentivizing the behavior you're role modeling, you plural, are role modeling and asking for. And that's really rare.
Yeah, we try. I mean, that's what we try to do because, okay, again, if I'm the leader of the leadership team and I know only 10% of the time I have the right answer, okay, well, then my people aren't always going to have the right answer. That's not what I can reward.
No.
It's the process that needs to be rewarded.
Yeah, because you're missing loads of opportunities if nobody is ever more than 10% right.
Right, and then that creates a culture where risk is tolerated because it's not like, oh my God, if I do this wrong, then you're going to do a lot of things wrong.
It also reframes failure really well, doesn't it? In terms of it's part of the learning process and it's not about being right or wrong. Therefore, it's not about failure. It's about trying and testing and then coming back together to brainstorm is what I've understood.
Well, again, so failure is an interesting word to me. I mean, failure just happens when you quit.
Oh, interesting. I was going to ask you about what is your definition of failure, though.
Yeah, it's just when you quit. I mean,
When you give up.
totally. Like I think about kids. This weekend was Memorial Day here, and we had a little boy at the house, 2 years old, right? And he's got his floaty on, and he's just jumping in the pool. He has zero fear. As he's walking up the steps to the slide, he's going down. Totally eats it as he comes down the slide. He doesn't think he's failing. He's just like, let me go try that again and
Yeah.
again and again until I perfect the slide.
Hmm.
It's not failure. It's just, hey, anything I do for the first time, why would I expect it to go perfectly?
Yeah, I think that's society's expectations, though, isn't it? We're back to the idea of labels and societal norms and what a good leader does and what a bad leader is, and how we should lead, how we think we should lead. And I think it's just great and very refreshing for me, Vera, to hear that failure is just when you give up, and risk is just part of life. And when you put it that simply, but it is that simple, although the emotional reaction can be complex depending on your formatting and the culture you live and work in. But I love the fact that you've just simplified it and said risk is part of life and failure is giving up.
Yeah, that's how people ask me, hey, your failures. I'm like, I don't really look at life that way. I could look at my first marriage as a failure. I don't. Hey, I got my son out of that marriage.
Exactly.
Most important thing. And then, I got remarried to an incredible human being, and that wouldn't have happened. So, is that a failure? No, I just think it's a learning.
It's really interesting in terms of, because you talked about Gary, and I wanted to ask you around who are your role models and influences, because we've already heard about some of them in the story. But it would be interesting to hear a little bit more of the story. So what happened after California? And Gary is clearly somebody who influenced you massively. And I'm extrapolating, he's probably a role model for you in the way he led you during that time. Did you have any other like major influences? And what happened
Yeah,
after California? That's what I really want to know.
yeah, I mean, I think I have there, you saw Gail earlier. Gail,
Yes.
we started working together. She had 3 girls, a career. For me, she was an incredible role model for me, especially as I was younger, and just watching, oh, you can be an incredible mom and have this great relationship with your three beautiful girls, and you can have a career. Oh, it's possible, and a relationship. And so there were a lot of people. I love reading. There are a lot of people that influenced me. And actually, even to today, there's this young woman on our floor. Her name is Marlies. Okay. She's a new manager. And I come into the office one day, and her whole office is pink. Every square inch of her office is pink.
Okay.
She loves pink.
Fair enough.
I'm thinking in my head as I'm walking to my office, I'm like, here is this young woman, new manager, knows herself so well, didn't ask permission, just said, hey, this is how I want my space to be. I feel super comfortable in this culture to do that. And I know that the people in this culture are going to accept the fact that, hey, this is who I am, and they're going to applaud me for it. That influences me.
Yeah, of course. You don't need any feedback on how good your culture is there, do you? My goodness.
But it's also hey, I don't know when I was her age that I had that kind of, I was going to say balls, but
Yes,
exactly.
I
didn't have that. I didn't. And I'm inspired by that. Like, okay, so those times where I'm like thinking in my head, what are people going to think? Or maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should. That's a story where I'm like, yeah, well, if Marlies can make her whole office pink, then you can muster up the whatever energy or nerve to go do this thing.
No. It's brilliant though, isn't it? Because it just shows you that inspiration and influence can come from anywhere.
Anywhere, if you're looking for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as your eyes are open and you're curious about it. But how big an influence do you think that your different cultures, I'm talking about sort of national cultures, living in Toronto, being Yugoslavian, how much has that influenced, do you think, the way you see who you are and how you show up in the world?
You know, we did this bias training
Mhm.
in 2020, and it was potentially one of the best trainings I've ever done. And what it taught me was everybody has their own unique set of experiences and their lens for the world.
Absolutely.
So the fact that I'm from immigrant parents, I have a certain lens.
Mhm.
Other people that are from immigrant parents may not be exactly the same lens, but they have a certain lens.
Mhm.
If you're living in France, you
Yeah,
have a different lens
of course.
than I do living
Mhm.
in California. If we have a lot of diversity at Sidcor and in our sales, in
Mhm.
our business and sales. And what I've learned is I need to stop for enough time to try and understand your lens.
Mhm.
And if I do that, then the richness of the experience, the interaction, the dialogue, the negotiation, the transaction, it's going to be better for both of us.
Mhm.
So I think different cultures, I think different upbringings, I think the South in the US to California, we're
Yeah.
talking about two different cultures there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think I can come to you and
Mhm.
say, hey, how do we interact? How do we have a business relationship, a personal relationship, unless I stop and really consider, hey, what lens are you looking at the world through?
And I think it's so important. I often liken it to going to the opticians, you know, when you go for glasses and they try all these different lenses in front of you, which one fits. And even when you've got one that fits, that's only yours.
That's only mine.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the start of leaders creating conditions for people to thrive starts there.
Well,
And
and that's what's real.
yeah.
I just read an exit interview that we did. Somebody was leaving the business, and a piece of their feedback was they didn't believe that they were coached the way that they needed to be coached.
Okay.
So to me, that's a lens. It's a
Of
lens we
course.
missed.
Mm.
That's a question, you know, maybe as leaders we should ask.
Mhm.
Hey, am I coaching you the way that you can receive it? Yes or no? If the answer is
Mm.
no, then okay, great. If I want to be a great coach and leader, I got to change the way I interact with you based on your lens, not my lens.
Mm. Mm. It's really interesting. And if I take the lens of women and women in leadership, because, you know, we need to make progress there. And I'm a big believer in, to come back to my comment on your system and how it incentivizes and rewards in coherence with what you're asking for. You know, we don't need to fix the women, we need to fix the systems, I think. And it starts with, not just for women, but in general, it starts with understanding other people and their lenses, and also understanding your own lens, you know, what triggers you, how you show up. But what do you think about women and women in leadership? I mean, you're at the top of an organization. There aren't as many women as there should be in those global decision-making positions. How do you think we can make progress more sustainably there, Vera?
Yeah, I think a piece of it is time. This may be a very unpopular opinion. I just think men have been at it longer.
Mm. Mm.
Right. So if you think about historically, okay, you know, back in the day, there was only one spot. You got one top spot.
Mm.
Normally it was, you know, based on who you were born from. That's how you
Yeah.
got the top spot.
Yeah.
Everybody else were the workers.
Mm.
Okay, the industrial age happens, and then, oh, there are other spots. Well,
Mm.
who's in the workforce at that time? Men. So they took the spots. Then they figured out how to work together and how to organize and how to support each other. Okay, so they were in business way longer.
Yeah.
Then women come into business. Okay, same thing. There's only one spot. We're competing. We don't know how to support one another. There's only one. Okay, as time has gone on, there's more than one spot.
Mm-hmm.
So now what you see is women are rising into those spots. I think what we need to learn how to do is organize, support, teach,
Mm-hmm.
advocate for. But again, those were all things I think men learned. They just learned it hundreds of years earlier.
Mm. Mm.
We're coming up.
Yeah. But do you think we're coming up into a system that is going to allow us the same
Oh, yeah.
opportunities? Because I think really interesting. You come back to the bias discussion of the bias training. I mean, what do you do to bring women into those positions? Is it about just making them more visible? Is it about giving them time? Is it about mentoring them? What's your experience? And I'm
Well,
not
to
talking
me,
about company policy.
number one, it's performance.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. We have killers here.
Mm.
Amazing women doing amazing things, right? So that's like number one. You got to perform. Number two, you got to want it, right? Number three, you got to step into it. And that's another thing I think we're just finding out. Instead of stepping out, hey, you know, you want children, you want a family. That doesn't mean you can't have a career. But there was a period of time where women were like, okay, well, if I want this, then I can't have this. Now we're seeing a lot of examples. I want this and this. Okay, now I have examples around me, everywhere. I can do both if I want to. Okay, then it's, and look, sorry for the dudes that listen to this, or maybe they'll turn it off. I'm not sure. I think women are better leaders.
Yes, I agree with you.
We listen better. I think we're more empathetic. I think we're more just thoughtful. And it's a big generalization. So, you know, I'm not saying men aren't great leaders, but I think at the end of the day, from a leadership perspective, women are incredible leaders. So I don't think the system is going to keep us out.
Okay.
I don't. I think what's going to happen is, especially when you think about talent, 50% of talent is women.
Yes.
So if you are a smart business person, you better figure out how to recruit, retain, promote women. Because that's 50% of your talent base.
Yeah.
And there's not a business person in the world that's going to limit their talent by 50%. Not a smart one.
No. And it's not about promotion of percentages of women for saying that we have women at the top, or that we have, you know, 50-50 or 20-80 or whatever. But like you say, it's a sound bottom line business decision.
Totally. It's just, hey, this is my talent pool. If I don't figure out a way to create a business where 50% of this talent pool can win, I'm going to lose 50% of the talent. That is not smart.
No, it's not smart. And it's interesting now in terms of the pipelining, because, you know, Sidecore also does sort of digital, more technical subjects. Do you see as many women applying as men, or is it still male dominated in terms of the people who come to you?
No, so it's interesting. I was just speaking with my recruiting manager, Alex, last week, and we have account managers, campaign managers, we call them. They're the ones that deal with the client and the field, right? Just, our sales teams. And I was asking, hey, I'm seeing a lot of male candidates. Why? She's like, a lot of women don't apply. I'm like, why would that be? So we dug into what does the ad say? How are we marketing this position? Are we proactively reaching out to women in these roles and other places? If we do have, 2 or 3 women that apply, can we go back to them and ask them the process and what do we need to change in that process? So for some of our roles, we just don't have women applying. Okay, so that first, I got to look at the mirror. What do I need to fix in the process? But then I wonder, okay, what's going on out there? Do women feel like they can apply for these roles? Are these roles not attractive to them? What do we need to do to change the role? So those are things that, we're thinking through as a business.
And in terms of sort of the more upfront parts of the pipeline, do you see female girls and female candidates coming into the sort of educational institutions that can lead to them coming to your organization?
Well, I mean, if you think about, and I can't, don't quote me on the stats, but you think about how many women are getting business degrees. I mean, that, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's tipped men. There's more women getting business degrees than men.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you would think, okay,
why aren't they there?
Right. Where did they go? Right. Where are they? Now there are certain roles, I think a lot of our marketing creative roles, we see a lot of female candidates. So that could be a little bit the system. But again, with time, I believe that system, those roles, those gender roles, those, hey, this is what's appropriate for women to do and men to do. I think a lot of those barriers, I think just with time, they get broken. And you see it. You see it.
Well, I think particularly in the new generation, the younger generations, they're just this like, what? Why are you asking me that question? Of course I can do that, which I find very refreshing. But
right. My son's working at this software sales company, and all of his friends landed in great places, right? And there are 3 or 4 of the women that they grew up with, I should say, they're women now, but girls, I'd say they're girlfriends, right? And 2 of them in sales. And we'll have this conversation. And I'm like, sales, huh? And they're like, yeah, like, why? Yeah, of course.
Why not?
Why not? I was like, okay, never mind. That's my residue bias. That's not your, that's not even remotely how they think.
Which is great. And we just need to harness it and sort of use it a little bit more and give it momentum. But to come to that idea of pressure and the pressure in the system, which is bigger today as the markets move particularly fast and technology is moving fast. But as a CEO, how do you manage that pressure, Vera? How do you manage that pressure? And link to that, therefore, what is your definition of success? To come back to something we sort of touched on right at the beginning of the podcast. Because for me, they're linked. So there's my lens. Maybe they aren't linked for you. So tell me.
Yeah, I mean, what's pressure? What creates pressure, right? It's the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I think about pressure in my business, where I feel it, I've made commitments to 4,000 people. And my commitment was that we're going to create an opportunity where you can create a better life for yourself. And so if I spend 80% of every day focused on that, I don't feel pressure. There are certain days I spend 20% of my days not focused on that, 80% focused on things that are just not important. Then I feel pressure.
Okay, so it's constantly going back to your bigger quest.
Right. Right. What are the things in my business that are going to create a better life for these people? That is my commitment. That was what I signed up for.
And I'm hearing it's also your legacy.
Yeah, and I don't, again, I don't know about that. I read this book, 4,000 Weeks. I think legacy is 2 generations and then they forget.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to remember unless you're, Marcus Aurelius, but I'm not Marcus Aurelius. So who's going to remember me in 3 generations, right? It's just, I'm here for this really small amount of time. I believe, especially in developed countries, you have a responsibility to be your best version of yourself. There are countries that you can, be born in that's not an option, but we in Canada, in America, in the UK, Europe, parts of Europe, you have a responsibility. You won the birth lottery.
Yeah.
So then the question is, okay, how do I show up for my life? And how do I show up tomorrow better than I am today, and a week from now better than I am today? That's my responsibility. And so when I look at the business, okay, well, I made a commitment to 4,000 people. I made a commitment to these clients that we're going to do something. And if I spend 80% of my time focused on how do we deliver on those commitments for the long term,
of course,
I left it all on the table. Today, 80% of my time was focused on the best things for my business. Okay, great. But where I don't feel good, and I have those periods of time where I'm in just minutia and crap, and I'm like, I'm not focused on what's best for the business. I'm not focused on what's best for the people. I'm not focused on what's best for our clients. This was a waste. And then I feel pressure.
And what do you do then? How do you either reframe that or resource yourself or step into a space where you where you can turn that around?
Well, Susie, I mean, you know, you can ask my team. Sometimes I just go nuts. I'm like, why are we talking about this? You know, I just freak out. But I do my, you know, I'm a big Franklin Covey person. I do my, where's my time going? What quadrant am I living in? You know, what do I eliminate, automate, delegate? And what is the work that only I can uniquely do? And so I'm constantly going back, constantly. And if I have 2 or 3 days in a row where I'm just immersed in minutia, I'm like, nope, this is not good. This is not what I signed up for. This is not the commitment I made to all these people. It was the highest and best use of my time.
And that which means you're constantly challenging the status quo. You're constantly reappraising what you're doing, what your team are doing, where the impact is, your value proposition to those 4,000 people.
Well, yeah, because then it doesn't make me feel good. I'm like, I'm not doing the right things.
Yeah.
My leadership team isn't doing the right things. Or why are we immersed? This is not, it doesn't move the needle. It's just work. It's busy work. We shouldn't be focused here. Nobody should be, actually.
So what is that your definition of success then, Vera? Because for me, defining your own definition of success is also about spending as much time as possible in a place where you feel fulfilled and where you are working on your bigger quest, if you like.
My definition of success, I want to feel peace. It has nothing to do with business.
Oh, peace, internal peace in general.
Yeah, just peace. I want to understand what that means. That will be my lifelong journey.
What a brilliant definition of success.
I would like peace, that I experience it every once in a while. I really like it. But it is something that evades me.
It's the busyness of life, isn't it? And the cognitive busyness of life in general.
Because peace to me is acceptance. Peace to me is not trying to change anything. Peace to me is being just in this moment at this time the way it is and being okay with that. And you know, look, and it could be, you know, idealistic, but to me that would be success.
I think it's ambitious. I don't think it's idealistic. I love the idea of, you know, managing to be present, like in the present moment for like 80% of the time and 20% time not, as opposed to the opposite, which is probably more or less the way we live. You know, Nancy Klein's time to think around, you know, taking the requisite time. Well, you alluded to it before when you were talking about lenses, taking the time to step back and just be with that other person's perspective and think, okay, I'm going to be present with that and see what that brings. So,
right, and be okay with it, not like, hey, you're wrong, or this is, you know, change it, or well, that's why you're this way. No, it's just peace.
Not making to make yourself right. Not looking to make yourself right. Absolutely. So, I mean, if I look at your journey to date and all the subjects we've discussed, there's so much in there. Can I ask you what sticks out for you the most, Vera? What is the most transformative thing you have ever done?
Now I've been doing it for 10 years. I think the most transformative thing I've ever done is therapy. Okay. It's been a 10-year journey for me. I think I've changed the most. I've learned the most. I think I've influenced the most amount of people. I think based on who I am, where I am, I've made therapy okay for a lot of people.
Yes.
It is probably the single biggest thing that I have done in my life that has transformed who I am and how I think.
Going inside, as I put it. Yeah.
And just really understanding. I think it's changed the way I've parented my son. I think I've changed my generational history.
Yeah.
Right. When I look at how we were raised, when I look at how my parents were raised, there are definite echoes.
Yeah.
Some good, some not good.
But it feels good, I think, to be able to intercept
Yeah.
that process and give it a different lens or a different frame.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my son, he will parent very differently, even than I did. And there are things that aren't echoes of our past that he just doesn't even, he can't even wrap his mind around certain things. And so for me, that's probably been the most transformative, whether it's myself as a person in relationship with people, as a parent, as a business person. I just think it's the single biggest thing I've done and worked on that has changed me.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And what therefore, if I sort of rebound off that, because leadership is an inside job always, but life is an inside job for me. So, but you know, what if you had a call to action, Vera, for our listeners that are thinking, okay, how do I go about building a successful business or influencing the culture where I work successfully?
Yeah, I would say a few things to people. I mean, number one, life, it really is short.
Mm.
It really is short. I know that sometimes we feel like, oh, we have all this time, but we don't. And none of our time is guaranteed. So I would ask people, just take the step, do the thing, move towards what makes you uncomfortable. Because at the end of it, you will be better for it. So whether that's, hey, I want to start in this industry that I know nothing about, that's okay. But you're really interested, just take the step. Hey, I'm a great senior leader and I really want a gun for a C-suite role. Okay, go take the step. Don't shy away from the challenge. I think that's what makes humans amazing. It is the challenge. We come out better for it. Whether you win or you lose, doesn't matter. You come out better for it. So that would be, I want to influence the culture. Okay, great. Take the step. Organize the thing. Create the book club. Do the virtual hangout. Right? If people work in their circle of influence, and if everybody worked in their circle of influence and didn't say, took their own power away, like I don't have influence in my world. No, everybody does. So if I work in my circle of influence, and if I take the step, I will be better for it. And I guarantee you 2 or 3 other people will be as well. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, people want to help you.
Yeah.
They want to help you.
But we don't like asking. Yeah, we don't like asking though, do we, Vera?
Right. All you have to do is ask. So if I want to start this business, find the person that just started a business, they will help you. I want to move up in a business and I want to become a high-level executive. Reach out to the high-level executive. They will coach and mentor you. People want to help us. So that's the other thing I would say, ask for help. And you may think you're a burden to somebody, but here's the other thing. It feels really good to get asked.
And I always remember my boss saying to me, I think you forget, Susie, how much people like being asked for help. Right. And I was like, and as I walked away, I was like, yes, you're right. You're so right. And right. You always feel like a burden. You're right.
And I'm not alone. I'm not alone. That's another thing that I feel like, man, maybe this is more prevalent or what I'm reading. You're not alone. If you don't want to be. Right. So whether that's, hey, I want to have a successful marriage. Great. There are a lot of people who are married who they can coach and mentor you. Hey, I want to be a better parent. There are a lot of really great parents. They'll coach and mentor you. Hey, I want to be better in my business. Great. Go find business people. They will coach and mentor you. We are not alone. And I find that a lot of people, they isolate themselves, and that isolation then creates this echo.
Stories.
And you can't get out of that loop. It's only when I interrupt it with, hey, Gail, can you help me out with this? Hey, Gary, I'm thinking about this. Hey, Rich, I need some help with this. I interrupt my own echo.
So essentially, personal agency across the board, though, isn't it? It's about owning your personal agency, and I'm hearing action as opposed to just reflection.
Yeah. I mean, and that's probably my motto, right? I mean, you can change your state immediately. Immediately. Like, you know, that one song that you love, if you put that one song on and your eyes light up and you twitch a little and you're dancing, you can change your state like that. So if I'm not getting the result I want, if I'm not getting the outcomes I want, if my behavior isn't what's going to lead me to success, okay, figure out what's going to change my state and then get moving in a different direction. And that is all on you.
Brilliant advice. I'm going to leave that there because I'm just going to let that resonate with our listeners because I think it's so important. Okay, Vera, thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories and your experience and your insight. Where can people find out more about you and Sidcore and what you do?
So veraquinn.com, sidcore.com, Instagram at Sidcore, Instagram Vera Quinn. I mean, we're all over the place. We are all over the place.
Okay, I'll put all those links in the show notes so that people can click on it as well.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for a great conversation, Vera. It's been great.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure.
Likewise.
Okay. Well, have fun in France.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.